start streaming. Hello everyone, how are we? Bang on 11, look at that. Look at me keeping time. It's beautiful. What a beautiful day. Oh no, I've revealed my secrets too soon anyway. Camera only. How are we, people? Welcome to a bank holiday Monday here in the UK. Welcome to a world where we now live in the post season 6 finale of Line of Duty. Wow, what a time. We are now alive. We've also got geckos in space. They've taken over a Russian spacecraft. The Russians have lost control of it. So there could be a lizard invasion, I don't know, 23,000 million years from now. Who knows? I don't know. What else is going on, people? How are we? Yes, let's talk about Line of Duty. Let's react. Let's get it all out. This is a time of catharsis. My goodness, what a disappointing ending to what was a fantastic series. But it might not be the ending at all. The call has already been put out for a season 7. They want something fixed. They're not going to live like this forever. They can't leave it like this. Such a good series. We used to have season finales where the suspect was going to break out of custody, where there was a foot chase, or a car could somehow keep up with a what was it? A Land Rover Sport, a Range Rover Sport. I don't know what car it was. You know, where they had to do 360 no scope shots to take out the suspect. We had season finales where people were on their deathbed doing Morse code, and it wasn't deciphered till like 2 seasons later. This is a show where we had an officer die in the line of duty. The name of the show. We've had, wow, just a fall from grace is what we've had. We've had an abysmal fall from grace. So we wake up this day and we mourn. Hi, Abigail. Are you mourning like so many of us are? Because I know just shaking my head. Now today, actually, before we go on, before I lament, let's say, too much about Line of Duty, we are going to look at Active Network Theory by Bruno Latour and his pals. We are going to do about that. This, however, is not a media unemployment line revisions class. Don't worry about it. If you're here for an unemployment line, this is not a substitution for that. There is no replacement for the media unemployment line. Yes, today is a morning of mourning. But thankfully the morning's almost over, both in a literal and metaphorical sense. But yeah, so if you're waiting to hear the dulcet tones of Yanni's voice, or if you're waiting to see the fantastic handwritten notes from Jade, this is not going to come today. This is a dictatorship of revision. That is a much more democratic space so everyone can share their ideas. That's not going to happen today. It's me, myself, and I. We're actually going to go through some of Bruno's theories from his own mouth, actually. We're going to simplify it. One of the things about Active Network Theory is that it gets hyped up to us and it seems like this really overcomplicated thing. When truthfully, if you're a bit of an overthinker, Active Network Theory makes perfect sense because every single thing that you can think of happens. So we're going to take it back. We're just going to look at a simplified video from a student, and then we're going to look at Bruno Latour himself. I've got some notes to share with you, so get your notepads ready. But again, before we do some edumacation, let's talk about an actual media text, shall we? So yeah, Line of Duty. Now I'll admit, this was the first series I had watched somewhat semi-live. I didn't watch every episode immediately. I did watch a few of them out of sync. I watched, like, of this series, I watched the first 3 episodes live. Previously, I pretty much watched the entire series in, like, I'd say a week or 2 weeks. I know I definitely watched series 1 to 4 pretty much like back to back in like 3 days. I was like up till like 2 in the morning. I think it might even be later a few times, watching what AC12 are getting up to. And so for me, being able to just binge the series, I might have glossed over some details, and that is key in looking at any sort of media text critically, it's also being aware of how you yourself view the text. If you watch a movie in the theater, you can have a different experience than if you watched it on some bootleg website, and again a different experience than if you're watching it online, or if you're watching it when it comes on TV and you've got the adverts every 15-20 minutes, half hour. So I'm aware that potentially the ending for me had changed. However, it seems that my complaints of it being a somewhat dull ending also applied to people who watched it from series 1 when each episode dropped. So I'm not alone in my complaints. I think personally the end of Line of Duty was a little bit painful in the respect that it was a pretty good episode. It wasn't like a bad episode. It wasn't like the ending didn't make sense. I've been making a joke that it could have been Buckles. I wouldn't say as early as season 1. I did say everyone in Tony Gates' team, that's the first villain from Line of Duty, every single officer in that unit was corrupt. And it turned out pretty much everyone but Buckles. And I don't know what the name of the Asian police officer was. I think only the Asian officer... I have to double check that now. He ratted out Gates because he wanted to go clean. Oh, what's he got? IMDb. Oh, IMBD. No, let's not do that. IMDb.com. And it seems as if Buckles was like this new guy who kind of just got away with it. Oh, there we go. He kind of just got away with things. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time because he kept on just reappearing. And I was like, we'll keep it 100. Oh, this is horrible. Hopefully we see his face down here. Oh, no. This is the worst way to look for a character, isn't it? I can't see his name. Oh, Trevor? Oh, apparently his name was Trevor. Okay. That doesn't seem completely correct. He's only one episode, apparently. Episode 6, that's definitely not him. This is the thing about IMDb. But anyway, yeah, a little bit heartbroken about the ending of Line of Duty. Buckles being this criminal mastermind is a little bit of a disservice in my opinion. I felt like Buckles would have been a good fall guy, to be honest. I felt Joe taking him out, chef's kiss move there. So yeah, big spoilers by the way. Well, you came here for spoilers. And it's got me thinking. The end is nowhere near as Game of Thrones. It definitely has the same feel of deflation going into it, but it's a pretty acceptable ending. And I'm hoping there's a season 7 because I am more than willing to let the writers wheel this all back and they say, you know what, we were wrong about Buckles. I'd be a little bit annoyed that they do it, but I'd be like, you know what, fair enough, it wasn't Buckles all along. I was saying during the season, I felt like they were about to move the goalposts, and it seems like they did. For the last 4 seasons, they were like, we're looking for H. We're looking for H. Give us H. And then in this series, they're like, we're looking for the 4th man. It's not H at all. It's the 4th man. And I thought, you know what? Maybe they're just they're going to open the scope of their investigation a little bit, you know. But it looks like they opened it pretty wide, and now we have a kind of a flimsy reason as to why Buckles is the guy. You know, Kate made a testament to his lack of organizational skills there. So for it to be Buckles as this fantastic criminal mastermind that survived essentially a decade of police investigation into institutional corruption is a little bit of a shock. Especially when we had Osborne. Like it's highly hinted at that Osborne is the true ringleader, the true mastermind behind it all. Buckles kind of throws that theory under the bus. Potentially another big brain move from him there. This destabilizes the organizational structure of the investigation. Buckles is very much a guy saying they all broke off into separate. He's at the Birmingham accent actually. He goes, "Oh, they all broke off into separate OCGs," and it's like, okay, fine. If that's what you want us to believe, so be it. I know. Like a lot of gang shows, they do this idea of like, oh, once you go to the ringleader, there's a power vacuum, and all of the criminal elements they bubble up to the top, and they vie for power. And I guess they kind of hinted at that, but we don't really see it. There's not really evidence of it. reflecting on what happens at the end of season 5, I kind of get this theory or this idea that Buckles was so far removed from the ideas of the different OCGs that they didn't even know who they were dealing with, and that's how how secure this network was. Super annoying. I am very much annoyed that Buckles somehow managed to find a link between himself and Furwell, or he knew where Furwell was, to kind of spoof an IP address in Spain. Because let's be honest, man, if any of you got if any of you use like a VPN or something, they send you off to some places that you've never been before, and it's like Vanuatu or people been to Bulgaria, but they might send you like some just IP addresses that don't make any sense. And yet this guy's like, yeah, we're going to Spain, mate. Mallorca, Magaluf. We're going to spoof our address to Magaluf. So a little bit weird, a little bit annoyed then, and Furwell wasn't even the guy. I think that'd been a very, very good payoff. We've got Osborne linked to Furwell, who's been using Buckles, but Buckles being a mastermind is a little bit annoying. So, yeah, I mean, we've even had a scene where Buckles was, quaking in his boot. I think I tweeted he was quaking in boot, and he's shaking milk and quaking in boot when masked man, one of the masked man, was being murdered in his cell. So that's a little bit annoying. That one of the characters is like, don't be a rat, and it's like Buckles is being a mastermind this whole time. They don't even know who they're talking to, which is very annoying. So I don't know. I feel like they gave us a draft script, and I'm gonna blame COVID. COVID is always to blame. Nothing is sacred under COVID. They've taken everything from us. They took sport, they took socializing, and they've taken the Line of Duty final from us. Absolutely outrageous behavior there. But anyway, yeah, I think that's all out. Just gonna be lots of bad tweets from me for the foreseeable future about Line of Duty, and I want you all to join in me in this period of national mourning, as we all make bad tweets for Line of Duty. But anyway, let's get on to some revision. Let's actually do what the purpose of this live stream is for, and that is to revise Actor Network Theory. Okay, so what exactly is Actor Network Theory? Who's it by? Well, we've got Callan, Outcritch, Law, and Latour. They are the 4 masterminds, I like to call them, behind Actor Network Theory. It's also known as ANT. So if you think of ants, think of Actor Network Theory. Bruno Latour kind of publicized the idea, the theory, in 2005, or at least formalized it. The idea had been, kicking around for a few decades from my research. And in academic terms, they call it a material semiotic constructivist approach to sociology. To simplify that, it means material meaning things that we can see, hear, touch, taste, smell, the 5 senses: touch, see, taste, hear, smell. And semiotic meaning symbols, so it looks at physical things and symbols. And in constructivist meaning it puts all these things together to construct an approach to sociology. The interesting thing here is that it's not a critical approach. So what differs here massively between critical and constructivist approaches to any discipline is that critical would be a deconstruction. So if we have I don't know. Let's take an ant, for example. Let's take an ant, a deconstructivist critical approach to an ant. We'd be able to see its anatomy. We'd then be able to see how it works within a society of ant colonies. Its geography will matter, what it does, and then we can say ants have this role to play in society, or an ant has this role to play in an ant colony. So we can look at it as big or as small as we want. Construction is about, before we even are allowed to criticize, as it were, it's what exactly are we looking at here? Let's actually look at all the pieces. If we do have an ant, what else is the ant interacting with? It's interacting with soil, it's interacting with other ants, it's interacting with leaves, it's interacting with, again, picnics. And why is that picnic there? The picnic's in a park, the park's in central London, and then we can continue to expand from there. So if construction is about expanding, deconstructing is about contracting. So Actor Network Theory does look at things in a material and conceptual way. Again, if you're looking at semiotics, that's about concepts, that's about symbols. Symbols carry meanings. They're not necessarily what theorists like to say, natural truths or self-evident truths that we so in symbols we give symbols meaning, and as such, active network theory looks at things both in a human and non-human way. So there are going to be aspects where there are things that we just deal with and just say, these are what they are. And so this is a framework that can be used for critical approaches, and it also argues that things are multifaceted. There's elements to them. That means that there are individuals, like I said about with ants. There's individuals, so individual ants. There's then groups, so an ant colony. There are products, so what do ants create? Let's say ant hills. Technologies, so how those ants communicate. And then cultural influences, so if you are a worker ant, you do one such thing. If you are, I don't know, attack ants, well, I don't know too much about ants. I kind of just saw the word ant in my notes and kind of ran with it here. So those would be like ideologies or cultural influences, but in ideologies as to why somebody is a worker ant, because they have a certain biology, and so their pheromones inside the ant colony means they have to do this. And so depending on the different ways of and what we're examining, an emphasis on the individual, the group, the product, technology, or ideology is going to matter. So that's from Suma from 2016. I can drop the notes here. So I've got it in. I'm dropping in the chat here. I'm gonna drop the theory. Oh no, it's too many words. I'm going to get rid of the title. So it's a comparison of active network theory, or ACT theory, and how authors have used it in a supply chain. That's the name of the article. It was published on LinkedIn, which I thought was quite handy. So you can have a cheeky little read of that. And I'm actually going to go to pull up Safari here, because we're going to look at our first video shortly. However, we've also got the oh no, I've messed up here big time. Oh, you know what? I have to go to the chat. It's not showing up. Oh no, I flopped it big time here. I got rid of the wrong one. So let's bring it back. Let's bring back Safari. Let's bring it back. We're gonna bring back Safari because I have been a silly boy. So let's keep going about here we go. They're back. Oh, but they're massive. Oh my goodness. This is the funny thing. But this is the thing I love about live streaming. Is that you make one mistake and everything is over. It's all over for you. It's over for us all. Okay, let's rearrange that. Here we go. Alright, that's better. We're fixed. We're back in business, baby. So, whilst you're taking a cheeky look at Suma's description of active network theory, we are also going to move on to further on in our notes. So Latour himself in 2010 described active network theory as taking a scene which attempts to examine the individual components which make it. And so active network theory theorizes that nothing exists in isolation, and therefore everything has an interactive relationship, and those interactive relationships are worth examining in order to better understand what dynamics are present in each scene of analysis. So what people like to call them are scenes. If we can think of scenes in a film sense, where if you look at somebody in a bar or a bar scene, what is present there? We've got the neon lights. Okay, let's say it's got neon lights. There's like beer stains on the counter or whiskey stains. There's going to be music on a jukebox, probably dimly lit. And what we can say is that this is a dingy bar scene. So we can make extrapolations as to the clientele. They're not going to be high flying city bankers, are they? They're going to be most likely working class people, potentially in a rural area, or maybe somewhere in an inner city bar. And this is somewhere people go just to relax after work. It's gonna have its peaks and troughs. There's not gonna be business dealings going on there, and if they are, they probably aren't of the completely legal kind. And so these are the sorts of things that you consider scenes, and then all those relationships. What kind of bar is being shown or being served? It's not going to be craft beer, is it? Really, it's going to be probably name brand, buy in bulk, serve cheaply kind of beer, maybe even a little bit watered down. That's a relationship we have to examine. Why is the landlord of the bar or landlady, what do they call it? The owner of the bar, because pubs have landowners. Yeah, why is the owner of the bar watering down beer, kind of thing? Why is it in a working class neighborhood? Why is it catering to working class people? Why does it have big old neon sign saying sports on it? Why does it show sports? Those are all things that active network theory considers to begin to critique later on. So if we put all of these things together, Latour argues that these things are worth considering. Now, active network theory does not come without its issues. Adamanska and Shapiro, that is not anyone related to Ben Shapiro, don't worry, I definitely checked. So this is a print critique from 1990 titled "Surely You're Joking, Mr. Latour," from Science, Technology and Human Values. If you have an academic license, this is for you. So here we go. That's another source for you. Another source for your head top. If you get to Adamanska and Shapiro from 1997, so these again 90s babies sources. This is also kind of proof to say that active network theory has been kicking around for a while. Both of them have some pretty big criticisms. They actually say it's quite descriptive. They argue that it is an ineffective way to critique social influences, as the model simply describes what is present. Now, I'm willing to go out on a limb and say that isn't necessarily a bad thing. In academia, people want to be able to criticize everything and anything, and don't get me wrong, there's value in being able to criticize and in criticizing. However, active network theory goes one step further and says, you know what, before we get critical, let's put on our thinking caps and let's argue that there's some value in actually identifying what we're critiquing first and foremost. Isn't that right? So another great thing about active network theory is that in a weird way, as long as you can justify the connections, you're never really wrong. You can later on take a look at what is essentially an active network map, and then, or a connections map, and say, you know what, these are the sorts of things we should investigate further. And what I mean by that is, we're going to go into a little bit later in one of the video examples and the example on screen, but essentially, if we're talking about something like a car, for example, cars have for a very long time symbolized freedom, but you can also symbolize, it's a flammable box made of metal, and it's dangerous to drive. Of those two symbols, of those two meanings, both of them apply to active network theory. However, active network theory allows you to see which one you think is more worth your time critically examining. And I'm willing to argue that most people would look at freedom, at least in a semiotic expression. Whereas if you were an engineer, the fact that it's a metal box filled with flammable liquid and goes at high speed and is dangerous is arguably something that you're more likely to look at. So active network theory isn't, it being descriptive isn't necessarily a knock on its, moral character, let's just say. So this matters because active network theory does come out of a discipline of looking at technology studies. It does look at technologies and their influences on each other, their relation to one another, like I said, the relationships, and how they are manufactured. And again, this is going to come up again in our example, which I'm going to show shortly. So, these criticisms aren't a hint on active network theory's usefulness. And as a quick summary, let's just say that through considering its weaknesses and strengths as to what it actually serves, active network theory, I'm willing to argue, when we apply it to isolated targets of analysis, it begins to become more useful. Like I said, if we want to look at all of the symbols and all of the meanings that can come from one thing, by being able to map it out, we are able to identify which of the things that we are going to look at in a little bit more closer detail. And again, using an example of like a bar scene, we're able to break down the individual components. Now, as a student, what I'm willing to argue is that active network theory could potentially be the first thing you ever learn about on day one of media studies. Now, why on earth would I make such a bold statement? Well, put simply, in making your own actor networks or actor-actant networks, because those are keywords that we're going to look at a little bit later, you're able to identify what sorts of things you can then make an essay on. So if I'm looking at a horror film and I break down all of the aspects of it, let's say I'm looking at a horror movie, you know, I can look at the aspects of gore. What does gore represent? Why does the villain use a knife? Do they use a knife? Or are they like a bare hands horror villain? Are they a shooter? Are they a forever chasing someone? Does it only appear when someone's sleeping? Those sorts of things that we can begin to question. If we then, you can go from there, you know, what does sleeping represent? Sleeping represents, say, a state of unconsciousness or the subconscious. We can then look at psychoanalysis. So there we go. We've in what is a very short map there. I've not even gone into like production techniques, who created it, why did they create it, what was their influences. I've not even touched on any of those, not touched on the actors or the locations used. We've already managed to go from, oh, I'm looking at a media text, to, oh, I'm making a very serious critique about psychoanalysis in horror movies. And so I think it's genuinely a disservice that actor network theory probably isn't taught to us sooner. But anyway, some of you are probably here revising because you're like, you know, I've got a test. What exactly is actor network theory? I'm a little bit thrown off. So let's actually play a social science in 60 seconds video. It's a little bit longer than 60 seconds, and I should hope that the sound works. Gotta have that close up. Oh, quick clarification, because I didn't do it in my own time, and because this person only has 60 seconds, they've not done it either. But the difference between actors and actants is, I'm not going to say key, but it is very interesting to see how humans are humanized inside this theory. Quite a big criticism going around in academia currently is that a lot of people, individuals, human beings, societies are dehumanized, ironically. I guess that's for the sake of finding this objective truth, or this idea of, or false idea. I'm going to argue, I'm going to go out on a limb and say the false idea of objective truth, and say that actor network theory distinguishes between actors, human beings, and actants, things. So yeah, be careful if you're using the difference between actors and actants. Now, what is great about that video is I want to go back. I'm going to mute it real quick. I'm going to go back to the section where he destroys the phone, and he makes a claim, as I'm going to put it up into subtitles hopefully, is that the actor network theory has broken down or collapsed. He says it has collapsed. Now, what's interesting about actor network theory is that we don't actually have to argue for or against the idea that a network can collapse once you, I guess, break the object. What's interesting is that the components still exist, but what you've done is that you've now enacted a different network to collide with another one. So he's used a hammer there to collapse a network of an iPhone 5. In that respect, what we've done is we've taken all of the actants and actors involved in making the iPhone 5, and we've gone on to argue that the actors and actants that make a hammer have now collided to create an entirely new actor network, which is of a broken iPhone. So from that perspective, actor network theory is interesting and useful, and those two key ideas mean that the I guess the propagation, let's just use that word for a fancy word, fancy term, the idea that a network can continues to exist. Networks in that case never die; they only ever transform into new things, and that's also a key idea, because when we remember that there's a technology element to it, in the idea that matter is never destroyed, it merely transforms. What we end up stumbling into is an idea of where media studies, sociology, and technology studies, which is media studies anyway, but in terms of like engineering and the laws of nature, laws of physics, the laws of biology, the laws of chemistry, all of those sorts of things end up interacting. And in its own sense, active network theory is itself a theory of networks, a network of theories even. So don't be dismayed if you feel like it's overcomplicated. I think once we break it down a little bit further, what you begin to see is that actor networks aren't scary. They're simply overthought, which is fantastic, because if you're an overthinker, everything's ready for you. But for the sake of simultaneously simplifying and complicating things, I'm a big proponent of only ever using the words of the theorists themselves. There you go. You see me looking at active network theory. So here we go. We've got a talk that I referred to earlier from Bruno Latour, his international seminar on network theory keynote, that he gives to ANC Anberg, if I'm correct. USC Anberg, my bad. Sorry, Anberg. Please don't. I don't know. I haven't even replied it to there. So we're going to look at what Bruno says himself, and listen to the man of the hour. That's what he's going to say. This is going to be in 2 or 1.75 speed. Or 1.5 speed, so it's a little bit fast, so hopefully you can keep up. However, the reason I've done that is because, one, it's a 48-minute video, let's be honest. He wants to sit around here for 40 minutes to listen to this. And two, it didn't need to be 48 minutes, so let's go. Okay, so quick simplification here again. What Bruno has done very interestingly is that he has compared the ideas that what create food, the things that create media texts, are no different than the things that make sewage networks. They're no different than what we make for a train network or a road network or even our communications network. And in that, he actually accidentally identifies an overlap there. We have media studies and technology studies, and they have networks. Oh, look, the internet, that's a network too. Surely we can analyze the individuals and the things that make up our internet as a media studies idea, as well as an economic, as well as engineering one. So basically what I said earlier, just to clarify. So what I said earlier, we can look at one thing, and depending on our own disciplines that we take to it, we can take different meanings or reasons as to what is worth examining further. And active network theory bridges the gap between the two of them quite nicely, I'm willing to argue. Papa. Yeah, there we go again. The idea is a thing as well as a concept. He's talking here about how something can be both physical or material and semiotics. That's why people call it a material semiotic, a constructivist approach to sociology. Oh wow, yeah. Throwback to James Cameron's 2009 Avatar, where if you remember, this is a real throwback. All of the trees and living things on Pandora, which was this world somewhere out in the cosmos, everything was interconnected as this interconnected life force. Bruno is making a jokey reference to that to kind of argue we should imagine everything that we do is interconnected in the same way. So very nicely there, Bruno basically admits that he's not just approaching, he's not created this theory in a vacuum. He's saying active network theory comes from multiple disciplines. Everything that makes philosophy worth studying, everything that makes sociology worth studying, everything that makes technology studies worth studying are all valuable and useful expressions of analysis that contribute to active network theory. And if those things are contributing to the existence of active network theory, we can also wheel it back and say, hey, look, like I said again, reiterating, we can look at one thing, and depending on our discipline, what we then go on to deem relevant to our own analysis is all valid. So, in a weird way, active network theory is very democratic and very collaborative. We like that. I do like that. So again, could I say that active network theory is driven by Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Great question, Abdel. I think that there could definitely be an element of Maslow's hierarchy being involved here, because if we look at, say, the idea of food, right, so that's at the most bottom part of the pyramid. What we end up seeing is that people need food, they need water, they need shelter. Is warmth on there? Well, depending on who makes the pyramid, it could be on there, and all of those individual things would contribute to someone's sense of what's that higher up on the list? Sense of self worth, self actualization. Because let's face it, if we live in a society that doesn't value dirty looking people or dirty people, then access to water is not necessarily one that only contributes to their immediate sense of day-to-day living. It's also going to contribute to their sense of self-worth in society as well. So I'm going to say yes. I'm going to go on the limb and say yes, because that's the great thing about active network theory. You're never wrong. But great question, Abdul. The reason I pause it though is that Latour here argues that things aren't self-evident. So even though we have an object, they're never self-evident in what they produce, and that's important. Because if we take things as these self-evident truths, we will never examine them, because the truth is usually the final answer, isn't it? If we see something as up for negotiation or discussion, then there is a negotiation or discussion to be had. So yeah, don't just take, oh yeah, we're going to the moon as a statement in and of itself. It's, there's motivations as to why people want to go to the moon. What are we going to do when we get there? Why are we going there? What is stopping us from getting there right now? Those are all questions that provide an answer towards truth, because the statement itself isn't truth in and of itself. Oh wow, okay, that was an accident. I forgot about this bit. He literally makes the Columbia shuttle reference again. Why are we going to space? There are reasons behind it. There is much more to learn in the universe, as it were, would be the truthful answer. The self-evident truth is that there is more to learn in it, and going to space is a way in which we are able to actualize that ability. Yeah, that's another great point that Latour makes here, because essentially Latour is saying that, look, if you separate the aspect of the physical components, and you separate, and like those individual components aren't just gonna self-materialize and end up in space. On the other side, the bureaucracy of a system to say this is how you make a flying object, again, without the components, it's not going to end up in space. So the two of them need to interact in order to create an object which then accomplishes a goal. Another great point there is that Latour hints at this idea that every theory is, because on the phrase I'm built on the shoulders of the giants before me, or the greats before me. Essentially, what Latour is arguing here is that actor network theory, in and of itself, couldn't have existed without the theories which made the disciplines of science and technology possible. At the same time, those theories don't exist in a vacuum either. They exist because of the theories which came before them, whether they are created in response to trying to prove something or response to debunking something, or disprove something, I should say. Those are the nothing exists by itself, and so when we examine the relationships between influences and individuals, we begin to see how the things that they create go on to influence other people. Galileo and the Greeks. It's like, oh yeah, I'm so glad we're all here today, and you too, Meg, kind of thing. Okay, I left that pause a little bit too long there. Going back a few seconds, Latour references the idea of the differences between borders and then hierarchies and then markets. Um, this is a very subtle political nod here, in that, like I said right at the beginning, that there's ideology is also something else that can be deconstructed and analyzed or reanalyzed in actor network theory. And so, what is being spoken here is that even if you approach the idea of hierarchies, that there is a difference in how you can apply them. If we look at something like a hierarchy in our current democracy, we'd see the demos, so the voter base. They are then trying, or well, we don't have MPs, at least here in the UK. We have MPs, and then MPs are a step down from Lords, and Lords are answerable to the PM, and yet all of them exist within a democracy. The difference here is that if we go to somewhere else, like the United States as another democracy, they have a federalized democracy, and so they have the demos, the voter base. They then elect House of Representatives, who then but they also vote for someone in Congress, or the Senate and Congress, if I'm getting this correct. Yeah, if I'm getting this correct. And so there's two different levels there. So, a congressman is higher up than someone from the House of Representatives, but all of those underneath the office of the president, who then has his own, democratic wing of people who he selected. And so this gets very interesting to see how hierarchies are then reapplied again to something that is more traditional, say like a monarchy, where we have the king, and we have the lords, and we have knights, and then we have merchants and serfs and slaves, etc. underneath. So to then even apply it to something that is attempting to be non-democratic or complete or truly democratic, where everyone has one voice or whatever. The idea of hierarchy is again reapplied because we might have something like a market. So a market would be an idea of wealth. So even if we got rid of the structures of a king, of a prime minister, of a president, there could still be a hierarchy that exists because of markets. And so you have your rich and you have your poor, and so they're just because one doesn't exist doesn't mean another doesn't exist either. There's a connection between the two, which perpetuate them both. So even if we criticize one nation for its democratic or non-democratic practices, we can self-reflect in that how a market is upholding a sense of inequality in that respect. And there, rather than saying, oh, this nation exists in a vacuum with their own ideologies and their own behaviors, we can actually instead see that they are influenced by how other nations who do something similarly or differently are also impacting how that nation is building. Yeah. Yeah, another great point here is that what Latour's kind of hinting at here is that even like because things have to kind of interact in order to make them all possible, we are also seeing how new things are created or destroyed through an incompleteness in the networks themselves. So in the incomplete network of bureaucracy, that led to an incomplete network of components, which then led to an outcome which destroyed the entire network, which was the shuttle. He's also kind of hinting there that there was a meaning given to the shuttle before it was destroyed, and then a new definition or new meaning was given to it after it was destroyed. What does that mean there? Well, before the Columbia disaster in 2002, the idea of traveling to space was somewhat relatively safe. It was fun. We'd kind of perfected the idea, as it were. And then afterwards, after it was destroyed in the explosion, we are reminded that space travel is still dangerous. There's still so much to learn. We haven't perfected the process, and we still need to refine and redefine how we create networks to create subsequent outcomes or products. Let's simplify it. We have to refine our networks to create better products. Okay, another quick pause. A matter of objects to a thing. So, for at least in media studies, we talk about the idea of space and place. The idea is the differences between well, the difference is one has meaning and one is more like geographically linked. And I think I'm making a mistake here, but correct me if I'm wrong. The idea that something can be a space is that it has. Oh no, sorry. Something. Okay, I'm getting it right now. A place has no meaning. It can be the town square. A space is where we give it meaning to say the town square is a place for voices to be heard, ideas to be shared. It can be a space of commerce. It can be a space of freedom and expression, or it can be, if depending on who's running the town square, it can be a place of oppression. It can be a place of fear. It can be a place of political repression. So. the Latour hints that idea that things go from objects, which are things without meaning, to things which do have meaning. Yeah. Going back to the beginning again, people like to say that it's very descriptive as a theory, and in it being descriptive, we haven't, or it is somehow selling us short in what it can accomplish, which is, I'm willing to argue, a very harsh and undeserving criticism of active network theory. I think it's a great observation, though. But just because something isn't critical doesn't mean it doesn't have use. So, what he's mainly saying in a very complicated way here is that the elastic tensile things, I guess I'm going to call them elastic bands. Um, they had a meaning until this artist put them together in this configuration, and even in this configuration, there are different meanings to be taken from it. If you're up close, you have one visual from it. If you're very far away, it looks nothing. It looks like there's nothing special. It's like a piece of cloth. So, even in this respect, Latour talks about this idea that your proximity to an object will also influence how you perceive it as a network as well. So keep that in mind. Interestingly, here, Bruno also admits that you can't look at something too broadly or too narrowly. And what this made me laugh about is like, have you ever seen those gifs or videos where it's like, this is an atom. This is the space between atoms. This is the smallest observable thing that we can do, and they have like some funny name for it, of a molecule. And I think the molecule's too big. And then they zoom all the way out, and he goes, "This is a cell." And then if you zoom out further, and they go, oh, "This is a single cell organism. This is a small animal. This is a piece of plankton, and then they keep going out and out and out until they go into, a city, and then they zoom out a little bit further, and you see a country or a region, and you zoom out further, you see the entire world. You zoom out further, you see Earth and the Moon. Further, you see the solar system. Further, you see the Milky Way. Further, you see the entire observable cosmos. You go out further, and then even that seems insignificant. But essentially, that's essentially what Bruno's kind of hinting at. That is that you, with a network, you can look at it as broadly or as narrowly as you want. There's still something that you can take note of. Top quality banter there. Yep. Again, he's just saying it can go be as big or as small as you want to take it. What's fantastic here is that what Bruno is hinting at here is that there is a universality in academic theory, meaning that we can take its ideas and reapply it in the digital age. One thing that a lot of theories get criticism for is that it was made in an environment where we didn't think of the internet. It was all about mass communications, and now that we've got this decentralized way to communicate with people, it's not applicable anymore. And then someone else goes, well, actually, if we reconsider the ways that people tweet to their 10,000 followers, it's no different than broadcast medium. Right now, Omar is live streaming on YouTube. How's that any different, really, to broadcast media? And then someone else would go, well, if you really observe it properly, it's still not the same because he's able to see the chat. You can't do that when you're broadcasting television. And then somehow someone will bring up something like, yo, people sending live tweets. Basically, to cut a long story short, Bruno is saying here that rather than arguing that the theory is pre or post digital, that is to say, it is before or after the internet came about and we were able to connect to people in a new or revolutionary way, academic theory remains the same whether you're looking at a rock 10,000 years ago or a picture of the rock on the internet in 2021. The idea that we can connect that rock, its meaning, how it was constructed as a thing that we're able to observe matters. Granted, the answers are going to be slightly different, but it still matters. Why does it matter, or why do they differ? Well, a physical rock is going to be out somewhere out in some green pasture with some cows around it, whereas the rock we see online is going to be made up of a picture taken by a camera that was then digitized, and then people made the camera. There's laws, trade agreements, etc., that made that camera. Why someone got their hands on it? Because they had their own socio-economic influences that allowed them to afford or steal a camera. But also their own education, which allowed them to upload it to the internet. We, with our own education, are able, and our own socio-economic condition and reason as to why we're able to access the internet, able to see that rock online, etc., etc., and it can keep on going from there. So there is I guess, in it being descriptive rather than critical, academic theory can be reapplied to whatever the next thing is going to be as well. Whatever comes after this digital age, academic theory can still exist then as well. Again, 2010, Second Life was an actual video game. Linden dollars was an actual currency that you used. You paid real money for. Essentially, it's a bit like pay to win now, with the idea that you might spend real money on V-Bucks for Fortnite, and that gives you skins or whatever. In Second Life, it was more than just getting skins. You would get like actual objects that would like give you a better job, and you could like live your life in as, I don't know, a merchant rather than a poo cleaner, or whatever it was that they had you doing at the time. I forgot exact details, but yeah, he's saying there's a difference now in that, like I said earlier with the Rock, before the digital age, we could live out this second life in our heads, and it was entirely of our own choosing. Now in the digital age, we can have this second life that we then live, but it's interactive with other people, and in it being able to interact with other people, we also identify a reliance on other people to create the software, network, hardware, everything that goes involved, to make our interactions with other people possible. Oh, thank you, Abdel. Yes, you can buy and sell land on Second Life. If I'm remembering correctly, I'm pretty sure there was like a whole scam where like people were having like real estate companies. I think Bruno actually hints at that now that I'm thinking about it more. There was like entire real estate companies on Second Life, and then they would yeah, sell it off for like ridiculous prices, and then there was, because it was like a fully internalized economy, there was no way of like really fully understanding how the market worked or what was a fair price. And I think it actually became a study for economists. That's a great thing about games. They are quite often used as modes of study for other people. World of Warcraft is used by virologists because of a game breaking bug. It was called poison blood or something like that, and it basically caused an infection within the game that almost killed people. And that actually became a case study for virology, and how people travel to danger areas, like journalists, to report on the danger, and they end up bringing back the virus to their own servers and their own lands. And it's so I think Second Life was another one. I'm actually gonna, as we play this, I'm actually gonna look that up a little bit more closely. Okay, quick pause to make 2 points there. Um, in the chat, I've dropped a link to a study about Second Life's this topic is the word that the author uses, environment and marketplace and its economy, which is very interesting. I think it goes back to as far as 2001, the studies, and then this was published in 2015. So there was 14 years of study there. Done a quick Google, and Second Life is still about even right now, and there's still that weird marketplace going on. So I think it'd be interesting to see an updated study on this. The other point being made is that Latour is now referencing the idea of that network theories don't exist in material vacuums. He's saying that if we go back to the idea of the Columbia disaster, we had a bureaucratic bureaucracy, as it were, and we've had a components element to it, and in that we shouldn't ignore that there's a social aspect going on as well, i.e., why certain people are in the positions in that bureaucracy, and why they are where they are. we shouldn't ignore the social aspect as to what happened in the wake of the Columbia disaster and how that was broadcasted, how that was televised. Unfortunately, the Columbia disaster is famous that it allowed a teacher for the first time to go to space, and it's also the launch that went disastrously wrong. What's also important is that we should look at the social element as to what went into making those components. Where were they sourced from? What was the conditions like in the factories that those things were produced? What is the social what was the social impact of NASA, and how that money, which is redirected, how are those things being redirected to, redirected away from, that's what I keep on saying to, and it's like, doesn't sound right. Redirected away from things like food programs, or redirected away from things like anti-poverty or war veterans, reintegration programs, or getting them housing, or away from, or drugs, or pro mental health provision. So those sorts of things will matter. My ideas on NBA Top Shop. From my understanding, it's in the newest NBA, and NBA the 2K. I might be mistaken here. So I'm tempted to say I have no idea, but from my understanding, it's a little bit like a loot box, but it's not quite, because NBA, the 2K market, again, if I'm correct, they have the bucks transfer between games, and I found out by mistake, because I think the first one I got was NBA 2K17, and when I got 2K19, the coins I had left in my account on 17 reappeared there, because I had to connect my accounts, log in. But then they revitalized it, or transformed it in 2020, and I know it got harder. It only got harder to make money in that game, and now it's like completely buy-in only. As a general rule, I'm mostly against in-game transactions for various reasons. I feel like if something's in the game, like if I've paid money, okay, I have to be clear here. If I've paid money for a game, everything within the game should be accessible to me. That's my personal opinion. I'm a little bit. I've come around on DLC. I kind of like the idea that even though I've bought a game, it's not the end of my experience there. And if the developers like the fact that so many people have bought the game that they want to add to it a little bit later on, so be it. I'm willing to reward their hard work and pay a little bit more. I do like free updates a lot more though. Whereas if I've paid, say, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 pounds for a game, and then you're also selling me weird things inside the game that actually have an impact as to how I develop a character to make my gaming experience more enjoyable, I'm going to question as to what is the point of me even playing the game if I can, in theory, just buy the best character possible. Like, what's the point of that? There's no fun in developing a character if it's going to be the best straight out of the box. There's no development there. If we watch a TV show, we watch it for character development. I want something similar in my games. Yeah, a little bit annoyed. In free to play games, I fully understand that the developers at least deserve to make money. They've worked hard. They deserve to have an income. They deserve to feed their kids, And so in-game transactions, I'm a little bit more okay with. I think the pricing of them is super weird. For example, one of the games I sometimes play, but not as much anymore because the development since I've got the game over a year ago has been garbage. Hot Slide. They have like crates of like parts and like points that go towards certain cars for like £60. Like, why on earth would I pay £60 for a skin which doesn't impact the performance of my car, and these points which, for context, if I get 20 points for £60, I'm currently on the my current car levels are where like I need like 200 or 1,000 points to upgrade the car. So I'm paying £60 for like making zero impact on the product that I have in the game. This is ridiculous. So I'm against the pricing strategy. They're super weird sometimes. Otherwise, free-to-play games I kind of understand. I don't mind some things being like 50p or £1, but when we're talking about like £20 for a product that is essentially you're gonna level out of it later on, i.e. being like you buy a certain currency, and there's two currencies in game where you get one you can earn through the gameplay, and another one you have to like buy into, and then the one that you buy into you can upgrade products quicker. Super weird. It's basically a cash loss for me as a player. There's no reward. Might as well just slog it out the long way and just continue to play the game, and you can make money off the data I'm basically giving to you by using the game every day for a year. you probably make more money that way anyway. But anyway, sidetrack. I completely forgot what I was gonna say about Bruno. So we're gonna move on anyway. Oh no, I made that point anyway. It's about social, isn't it? It was about social things. But yeah, I like that, Abdel. Keep coming with the questions. I like going off on tangents. Oh wait, I Oh, sorry. Let's pause it. I quickly realised that you meant Top Shot as in the collecting card game. My goodness, I went off on a whole rant for no reason. It's basically digital collectible cards. And let me actually pull it up. I'm going to double check this now. Digital collectible cards. So yeah, I don't fully understand how card collecting works. It's a bit like the sticker books, right? I think a lot of my criticisms for the in-game currencies which allow you to like level up things, but essentially you level away out or away from them, makes it kind of a cash loss for the player. Exists for trading cards, like even physical ones like match attacks. I think they're cool collectibles, but again, they're only going to be worth anything for like 8 months. 8 months from now, they're going to be absolutely useless. If you look at like the baseball trading card market, it's like where's my Ricky Mantle? Doesn't mean anything. Basically highlights being sold. Here we go. Yeah, so yeah, this is the other one. Like the dunks and stuff. Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Super weird. I don't get it. I honestly don't get it, because it's not like I can own the highlight, if that makes sense. It's still going to be subject to licensing, in a very roundabout way. Like these are all going to be temporary deals, from my understanding of what I'm looking at right now. Completely forgot about this actually. But yeah, they're kind of like sold as like or viewed as trading cards. I don't entirely understand it. I'm gonna look at it a little bit more, and I might come back to it because that could be a really interesting case study. Easy a LeBron dunk. They take a clip of it, categorize it as legendary tier clip, price it to 3 or 4 figure item, then it becomes a market. But why not watch it on YouTube? Yeah, that's a great point. It's super weird. It's one of those things that really gets me a little bit annoyed in terms of like making things accessible to the fans. Abdul, I know you're based in the UK, so the familiarity of the idea that say football is made more inaccessible through certain clubs trading rights that can only be traded between each other. I think this is a little bit of a similar thing going on, because if we get to a point where the rights of the highlights being sold to individuals are separate from licensing agreements, or they are somewhat combined. So what I mean to say is that, like, if I go on the NBA Instagram page and I see a LeBron dunk, and they're like, yeah, look at this dunk from LeBron James, isn't he the greatest ever? And then it gets to a point where like the person who owns the Top Shot highlight card thing is like, hey, wait a minute, you're infringing on my copyright. I have the TV licensing or licensing rights to this clip. You can't show it. We're going to get to a point where we're going to have like a completely decentral place where we can end up watching basketball, which makes no sense at all. I think it also has the potential to bring into question how we view live versus recorded content. A bit like how we have that dilemma in the UK where we're questioning if the Premier League can give the rights to Sky to then show those highlights on the Sky Premier League YouTube channel. Like that is a thing where, like, even I think sometimes on BT or sometimes on Sky they're not allowed to show the score because of a graphics television licensing rights issue. I know it's interesting action to. I know the BTCC, the British Touring Car Championship, have that similar issue where they can't show highlights that they would like to show online because they have an exclusive TV licensing rights deal on ITV. And then going to make that connection to ITV now, we also have an issue with ITV being able to show what they're allowed to show on their own ITV hub because of other licensing deals that they have with studios, as to they can only show it live as the thing comes out. But yeah, thanks. I'm glad you like my points about microtransactions. And yeah, one thing I would say to the second half of your comment, though, Abdul, is that even though there is no regulation to pricing, I guess it's one of those things about this is the beauty of the open market, in it. Like if you want to wave the flag for capitalism, it's about unregulated markets. So if who am I to say in this regard that the developer doesn't deserve $60 for their product? As a consumer, though, that annoys me because I'm like, you've kind of priced me out from enjoying everything that your product has to sell, and I would like for it to be regulated. I know that only 2 years ago there was a massive fight to have products get refunds on Apple products. Like if your child, who is technically too young to make a purchase themselves legally in some countries, are able to make a purchase illegally or legally via an online service, is super weird. And so yeah, people had to fight to have Apple give out refunds based on $1,000 purchases that their 3-year-old made on their credit card. It did make me chuckle a little bit. Again, he's just going back over and saying this is what should be highlighted and this should not be highlighted. You can go as big or as small as you want. The choice is yours as to what you then look at in closer detail. If I remember this video correctly, he basically just goes into more and more detail as to what we've already said. And this is where he gets into the bit where we go, oh no, active network theory is super complicated, my brain, my head. And because we're going into the last 20 minutes of this stream, what we're going to do is I'm going to keep playing this. I'm going to go camera off. And then we're going to look at an active network theory I made earlier in order to kind of explain, or how we can show how we can apply an active network theory in context and what that can then be used for. So enjoy what is the remaining few minutes of this speech before I change what is on your screens. Oh no, that's not the one with the actor network theory on it. Good fun, good times. Okay, here we go. Let's try this. Let's try this properly now. Dun, 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 dun. Don't know why it's not coming up. 1 second. Oh, here we go. Let's readjust that. Ha 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 ha. Okay. That took long enough. Alright, so we're in the last 5 minutes now. So I'm going to quickly explain to you what we're looking at here. So here's how I've applied an actor network in the nicest and simplest way possible. What I'm trying to say here is I've looked at the idea of a book. And what's interesting about this actor network is that, as you can quickly see, is that there's not really any central focal point to say that this is what it's about. The great thing about actor networks is that you can look at them from from a author's perspective. You can begin to create a network, and then you can break it down so you can reapply it. So the thing that you're focusing on changes. So, for example, I've got here a book. On one end, I've looked at its material aspects. I've got here paper, I've got glue, I've got ink. Those are the material things. On the other side, though, I've got something like escapism. That is its semiotic response. And so how do we get to a point of escapism? It's through our own imagination, which then links us back to the reader, the idea of an audience. However, readers are reliant on books existing. And so what we see here is that if we get our first idea as to say the book, that actor network is around the idea of a book, we can see how it applies to material on one end and the semiotic on another. Yet, even then, the semiotic idea, escapism links to material idea, the reader, and the reader links back to something material, which would be a worker, links back to a tree, which links back to another thing material, being paper. However, we also go to something like factory, and it goes to something else that is both semiotic and metaphorical or semiotic and material. That is shipping. So shipping is both an idea that we can look at as it has meaning, so we can see something literally moving, and with that we are reminded of things like tariffs, which is another material thing, but again comes with meaning, because tariffs are laced with ideology. They're laced with the idea that we can benefit our own markets, our own economies. Economies are again both material and semiotic. Again, government, again laced with ideology, is a physical thing, but is mainly it symbolizes representation, and in doing so we can then link back to other semiotic forms of analysis. So I could have said this is an actor network theory based on government, and we look at economy, we look at how economies directly relate to warehouses, which again to shipping. I've got shipping here twice, different places, which again shows how the same idea can be reapplied multiple times to multiple things. And so, yes, this is an imperfect and incomplete actor network. However, what we can see here is a relationship with things that continually interconnect. And so, if I was to then make an essay, which is why I say I think it should be the first thing that we learn about, is that we should probably go back to this idea that if we look at an actor network and we look at it as a way to begin analysis that we can then use in our essays, I can say here that books can be used as, or how books represent escapism, but how books are also a form or an embodiment of trade tariffs. And then we can look at it through how even the ideology of the writer, because I've not even included the writer in this network theory, how the writer's own ideology is going to be laced within the book. What the author may believe or want the reader to believe or take away from it is going to be within that book. And that's also going to impact how that book is written, published, and received. For example, let's say there's a Soviet writer, how they are perceived by a Western audience or pro-capitalist audience is going to be very different to, say, someone who's like a tanky who, believes in the I don't know, what do tankies believe? The unending, completely enviable existence of the Soviet Union, for example. So those are also things that would then even impact how the reader is viewed. And even then, that ideology is going to impact how a government might use it. So, for example, there are suppressions of some laws of some ideological texts, and that's going to be a government decision. It could be a social one, but mainly a government one if they ban it outright and make it a law where you could be criminally prosecuted for holding these books. So those sorts of things, all share an idea how a book can represent and link to so many other things that don't even seem remotely tied to books, such as shipping, or such as what have I got there? Information. Books. I've not even got a book. I've not even got here that a book is directly related as a form of information, but instead I've kind of argued that it contains or is linked to the idea of information. So that's an actor network theory. And to quickly summarize, as we come to the end of our hour and a half, to quickly summarize here, actor network theories are material. They are about things. They are also about symbols and looking at symbols, ideas, concepts. And it's about putting those things together to identify how a network is formed. Now, a network can be as big or as small as you like, depending on the focal point. We can look at an individual atom and how those atoms interact with one another, or we can look at the entire universe and how does the universe interact with itself. Actor network theory is dependent on the idea that nothing is self-evident in truth. We can merely begin to analyze points of truth, which then begin to put us into points of analysis. There is nothing which is irrelevant to actor network theory. The things that a sociologist identifies, the things that the engineer identifies, the things that the philosopher identifies are all going to be relevant and useful. And so to answer your point, Modi, yes, it will include the metaphysical as well. It will include something like, for example, if you said the idea that God is tied to books, would be a clear link to religion, which would be a clear link to ideology, which would be also impact social configurations, which would then also impact again how other products are made, perceived, and viewed. The metaphysical is just as useful as the physical, which is just as important as the symbol. So nothing is off limits here. Like Latour himself said, he is concerned and is inclusive of the things that make philosophy relevant to actor network theory, also played a part in its creation. So if you want to make your own actor network theories, your own actor networks, and apply actor network theory, I'm trying to say, to then use it as a point in which you can begin your investigation for your own essays, I strongly recommend it. It's become a great tool for me in how I begin an essay, just in that initial writing down ideas phase. Just take something that I like. Say it could be a game, so I'm looking at my game stack here. Say No Man's Sky, what does No Man's Sky represent? It's an open world procedurally generated game made by a small company, and I can look at indie development or how No Man's Sky represents, for the sake of argument, the overambition of indie developers, or it could be how No Man's Sky represents the idea of building a community, or how communities and or fan bases and communities and players how can have different opinions and perspectives of a game than, say, reviewers like IGN. IGN's famous for its terrible reviews these days. So yeah, that's my recommendation. If you have any comments, leave them below. If you want to share this stream with someone else, it will be it will be available as a video when I press end stream, so you can share it with someone who you think it could be relevant for. I am open to having people onto the stream, so if you want to be involved, don't be afraid to. If you want to get in contact with me outside of the stream, I know it's not in the description, but you can find me as at Omar Aline on Twitter, Instagram. So it'll be the same name as my YouTube channel. And if you aren't subscribed already, subscribe. We're gonna try and do one of these each week. We're gonna look at different theories each time. Next time, I think we're gonna look at the global village, kind of continue this idea of theories and how they apply. One thing really interesting about Marshall McLuhan is that Andrew McLuhan, his grandson, has identified how his theories have been misused. So we're going to look at what Andrew has to say about his granddad's theories, and that's going to be super interesting. So I shall see you hopefully next week. Next week, Monday or Tuesday, depending on what's going on. But yeah, take care, everyone. Stay safe. Look after yourselves. Enjoy the rest of your day. What is a typically rainy bank holiday here in the West Midlands. So yeah, see you later, everyone. Take care. Bye bye.